Do you know what I like to do when I get through a hurricane unscathed? I like to look at some baseball cards. You know, when you live in a area that gets hurricanes, it's like you feel bad hoping that it misses you, right? Because it's almost like you're hoping it hits somebody else. And I'm always hoping that it spins off and goes out to sea, and nobody's affected. But normally those things are going to hit somewhere. So it's kind of a catch-22. You're not wishing for it to hit other places, but you're wishing for it not to hit you. So you kind of are. And I think everybody that lives on on the coast feels that way. And people will say, like, I would never live where there are hurricanes. You should move. I get that. I used to say that before I moved to South Carolina. I used to say that myself. But you just never know. There was a tornado up the road before this thing even hit. I guess there was another tornado off the East Coast, and maybe we got some a little remnants of that. But it even made Good Morning America. I had seen it on somebody had posted it on Facebook that was driving behind this big SUV, and it just flipped right over. Just a little tornado came down and picked it right up. The home that my mother grew up in Western Pennsylvania, one day we had a tornado come through. I know it came right through our country club, and there were guys golfing, and they were hiding in the sand traps. It took my mom's home that she grew up in right off the foundation. It touched down, took her home. So, there's always a risk of Mother Nature, no matter where you live. Ironically, I went up to work in Baltimore, and I was living there for a year and a half, and I was renting a condo. And one day I'm working, and I feel the building shake. And I had a problem with my air conditioning, and they had to come fix it. And I know, that they were up on the roof. So my immediate thought is somebody working on the roof? Is there a crane out there? And I went out to take a look, and there was nothing. I went back to start working again, and the whole building shook, and my pictures are falling off the wall. And I go outside, and it was like something out of a Hollywood movie. The cars were going like this on the street lights were going like this. I was in an earthquake. And like a week later, I was in a hurricane. And a hurricane came through over the weekend while I'm hanging out in Baltimore. So I guess you just never know. I wasn't expecting to be in an earthquake and a hurricane in 1 week, and certainly not in Baltimore. But that's how things go sometimes. So I don't live my life scared. I mean, you have to live your life. Lots of bad things can happen, right? So I'm just having my morning coffee here. I don't know when I'll post this. It might not be in the morning. Drinking out of my Volvo mug. I have a couple of these. My wife used to work for Volvo, and it was so cool because she would bring home these test cars and stuff. They would build cars here in Charleston, and they do build cars here, and they build specific ones, so she got a free car to drive, and she get a new one every year as an employee, and she would bring home these test vehicles, and I could check them out, and they were pretty awesome. And what's interesting and kind of sad at the same time is when car manufacturers make test cars, they have to destroy them. They're not legally allowed to sell them or even give them away. And it's so sad because you could be giving these cars to the needy or donate them for some cause, but they're not allowed to. So they just have to destroy them. But man, they have some great cars. I became a big Volvo fan. Some sweet cars, and they had a spin-off company called Polestar, and they make electric cars that are amazing. I think they're more popular over in Europe, but my wife had brought one home. There were only like 2 in the whole United States at the time when they were building them, and just a sweet car. Their stock went public, Polestar. It's selling for about somewhere around $3.80 at the moment. I had to buy a little bit. Just keep an eye on it because I'm a big fan of their cars. That said, you know, I had done a video on altering of cards, and Pepino Man had made a comment, and it sparked a thought to me, and I'd like to hear your feedback on it. But you know, I've always for several years, you know, when people started to become so fearful of buying ungraded cards, I would always say, you know, like 99.9% of cards have never been faked. And, you know, when people submit to grading, there's a super high percentage of cards that get graded and oftentimes grade high. And they, you know, had these cards ungraded or bought them that way. And a very high success rate. But I think that is changing now. And for this reason, is that when you send cards in for grading and they get kicked back to you and say, can't assign it a grade, it's been altered, or there's evidence of trimming or whatever, what happens to those cards? What happens to those cards? Are sellers, you know, putting them on eBay or selling them through their platforms and not telling you that they sent them to PSA and they got kicked back? Are we being duped with those cards? I started to think about it. There's probably a flood of these cards, you know, being pawned off, and no one is telling you, I don't want to say no one, but I'm sure all the sellers aren't telling you, hey, this got kicked back for coloring, this got kicked back for trimming. Here's the card. So there's a new buyer beware, I think. There's probably a flood of these things, and they'll change hands over and over again. Maybe it doesn't matter to you, but it's funny. You know, the grading companies can get it over on us, can grade, you know, fake autos, can grade trimming cards, have everybody fearful of buying ungraded cards. And now, with all these cards kicked back, do we have a flood of altered cards that are being sold and we don't know it? Is it more prevalent now? See, in the old days, it was beneficial for you to trim ungraded cards and sell them as mint, and you get higher money. Nowadays, you don't get the higher money for ungraded cards. You get them for graded cards. So now, people are trying to dupe PSA, right? And many times getting away with it. So they're altering to get those high grades, to get those 10s. And when PSA catches them and kicks them back, now they're out there for us to buy. So what I'm trying to say is that the benefit of somebody who's unscrupulous, trying to trim to get 10s and send them to PSA, to get 9s and 10s, has gone up. So more and more people are doing that, and that means that even if PSA only catches a half of them or a small number of them, even if that was the case, that creates more and more and more and more and more and more altered cards that are flooding the market, that are getting kicked back and now flooding the market. So even though I've been a long time advocate that, hey, you shouldn't be so afraid to buy ungraded cards, my stance in the modern era is now changed on that a bit. So now I think we're to the point where we can't trust graded cards and we can't trust ungraded cards. And you know, one of the points I made in the other video is is this going to ruin the hobby if you can't trust anything? You can't trust. Pepino Man's comment was he trusts ungraded cards more than graded cards anymore. If we can't even trust graded cards, and will AI change this? Will AI change the game and make this a moot point? But if that is the case, then you're going to be hard pressed to ever sell an ungraded card. If the only cards you can trust are in an AI graded slab. Think about that. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Let me know. Thanks for watching.